Hey ladies, welcome to day 13 of A Beautiful Year in the Bible. We are in, if you are following along in the 52-week Bible study, we are on week 2, day 6, and we are reading Job 3 and 4. And before we get started reading Job 3 and 4, I kind of want to reintroduce what happened in Job 1 and 2. Our topic of the week this week is divine guidance and provision. And last week, it was the relationship between God and humanity. And so we read Job 1 and 2 last week, and we got to meet Job. We got to see where Satan tempted Job. We got to see how Job still did not curse God after his first test. Then Job was tested again in taking his health away, and he still didn't curse God. Even when Job's wife says, "You should curse God for this," he still didn't. And so then he had his friends show up on the scene, and they were there to minister to him. I'm sure they've all heard about the things that had happened, and they all have different opinions as to why Job is going through what he's going through. But the good thing the friends did is they came, they met together, they saw him, and they didn't even recognize him, it says in Job 2. And they sat on the ground with him 7 days and nights. But no one spoke a word to him because they saw that his suffering was very intense. So nobody said anything. That was a shout out to the friends for being friends there. That was probably the last good thing that they did, because when they open their mouth and start talking in chapter 4, it doesn't get good. And so we're going to read about that when we get to 4. But for 3, we are going to read about Job's opening speech. This is what Job was crying out to the Lord. And I think the friends were sitting there listening. And it says, chapter 3, after this, Job began to speak and cursed the day that he was born. He said, "May the day I was born perish, and the night that said a boy is conceived. If only that day had turned into darkness. May God above not care about it, or light shine on it. My darkness and gloom reclaim it, and a cloud settle over it. May what darkens the day terrify it. If only darkness had taken that night away. May it not appear among the days of the year, or be listed in the calendar. Yes, may the night be barren. May no joyful shout be heard in it. Let those who curse days condemn it. Those who are ready to rouse Leviathan." Leviathan's mentioned here. It's the first time he's been mentioned in the Bible so far. And we are going to talk about that a little bit. And I don't know if y'all can tell, but Job is not in a suicidal state. He is simply cursing the day that he was born. He's crying out saying, "Lord, if you were going to put me through this, then why did you even let me be born?" I don't know if anybody's ever been in that place. If you've been through something so terrible that, or if you deal with depression or anything like that, then you kind of can experience this a little bit. I mean, we've never had everything taken away from us and sitting in boils, but we do know that there is suffering and there is pain here on this earth. But so he's even saying that they should have roused Leviathan. May its morning stars grow dark. Verse 10, "For that night did not shut the doors of my mother's wombs, and hide sorrow from my eyes. Why was I not stillborn? Why did I die as I came from the womb? Why did the knees receive me, and why were there breasts for me to nurse? Now I would certainly be lying down in peace. I would be asleep. Then I would be at rest. When the kings and counselors on the earth, who rebuilt ruined cities for themselves, or with princes who had filled their houses with silver. Or why was I not hidden like a miscarried child, like infants who never see daylight? There the wicked cease to make trouble, and there the weary find rest. The captives are completely at rest. They do not hear a taskmaster's voice. Both small and great are there, and the slave is set free from the master." Verse 20, "Why is light even given to one burdened with grief? He's saying, why are you letting me be born if I was going to go through this much grief? And life to those whose existence is bitter, who wait for death, but it does not come, and search for it more than for hidden treasure, who are filled with much joy, and who are glad when they reach the grave. Why is life given to a man whose path is hidden, whom God has hedged in? I sigh when food is put before me, and my groans pour out like water. For the thing I feared has overtaken me, and what I dreaded has happened to me. I cannot relax or be calm. I have no rest, for turmoil has come. And so basically he is saying, Lord, why did you even let me be born? If you knew that this was all going to happen, because we know everything that happens has to pass through God's hands, right? He has to approve or deny it. We don't know. We can't understand it. We just know that sorrow and horrible things are going to happen to us. And it's not righteous or unrighteous that this is going to happen to. It's going to happen to both. And there is no amount of righteousness that's going to keep us from going through any kind of suffering or hardships. Now on to chapter 4. We get to meet his first friend, Eliphaz. It says in chapter 4, then Eliphaz the Temanite replied, should anyone try to speak with you when you are exhausted? Yet who can keep from speaking? Indeed, you have instructed many and have strengthened weak hands. Your words have steadied the one who was stumbling and braced the knees that were buckling. But now that this has happened to you, you have become exhausted. And it strikes you and you are dismayed. Isn't your piety your confidence and the integrity of your life your hope? Consider who has perished when he was innocent. Where have the honest been destroyed? In my experience, those who plow injustice and those who sow trouble reap the same. Basically, he's saying, you must have done something. You must have done something, Job, to deserve this. Because in my experience, how many of us do that when we're talking to people? Well, in my experience, this has been the case, especially when we're trying to talk to somebody about something and it don't help. It does not help. I have learned. So he says, in my experience, in verse 8, those who plow injustice and those who sow trouble reap the same. Verse 9, they perish at a single blast from God, and they come to an end by the breath of his nostrils. The lion may roar and the fierce lion growl, but the teeth of young lions are broken. And I just wanted to stop there. So this is the second time I have heard about teeth being broken. We read it yesterday about teeth being broken. So I'm going to do some research on that and I'll get back to you about that. But just a side note. So verse 11, the strong lion dies if it catches no prey, and the cubs of the lioness are scattered. A word was brought to me in secret. My ears caught a whisper of it. Among unsettling thoughts from visions in the night. So basically he's saying, look, I had a spirit come visit me. So y'all just listen up. He says, among unsettling thoughts from visions in the night, when deep sleep comes over man, fear and trembling came over me and made all my bones shake. I felt a draft on my face and the hair on my body stood up. A figure stood there, but I could not recognize its appearance. A form loomed before my eyes. I heard a whispering voice. Can a moral be righteous before God? Can a man be more pure than his maker? If God puts no trust in his servants, and he charges his angels with foolishness, how much more those who dwell in clay houses, whose foundation is the dust, who are crushed like a moth. They are smashed to pieces from dawn to dusk. They perish forever, while no one notices. Are their tent cords not pulled up? They die without wisdom. And that's it for chapter 4. But basically, Eliphaz's advice was meant to be an encouragement and a gentle call for Job's self-reflection. He was saying, look, there's got to be something you've done. Yet it could have implied that Job's children deserved what they got. it was in verses 6 to 9. It was saying that. Because they were, I mean, Job was making, he was making offerings on behalf of his children because they would do banquets, and I think all kinds of sinful things was happening during that time that his kids was doing. So Job was trying to make offerings on behalf of his children to the Lord for forgiveness, for if they even, Job even said, if they have sinned against you, Lord, I just want to make sure it's right. And so, and then it says in verses 12 to 16, Eliphaz seems to have been wakened out of a deep sleep to receive a supernatural message. Whether this was an appearance of God or an angelic visit is uncertain. Eliphaz thought his experience had provided him with wisdom to understand one of life's mysteries. But whenever I got to think about it, I was like, what my interpretation was that it was a demonic spirit that came and visited him. And the reason I'm saying that is because I believe that Satan planted that seed into Eliphaz's mind through this to make him think that Job has done something that has caused him to sin. It caused this to happen to him, because that's what he said to him is like, can a mortal be righteous before God? Can a man be more pure than his maker? If God puts no trust in its servants, then he charges his angels with foolishness. How much more those who dwell in clay houses? So he's saying, how much more are people? People are nothing compared to God's greatness. And so that was my interpretation of what had happened to his friend. I believe Satan visited him and planted a seed to make Eliphaz think that. And he knew that he was going to go visit Job. He knew that was one of his friends. And that could have been the seed that made him think that. And instead of encouraging Job, he's just accusing Job. Final takeaway from Job chapter 3 and 4. As far as God's divine guidance and provision, we know that God provides all these things. God can put a hedge of protection around us. He can also remove that hedge, but it could be that he is showing us something, and we don't have to curse God for him showing us something. It could be pride within ourselves. It could be something like that. So just, if you are going through a hard time, either it's a lesson or a blessing. Think about that. Everything that happens here on this earth is going to be a lesson or a blessing. And right now, Job is learning a lesson. I was thinking about in chapter 4, what about divine guidance for his friend Eliphaz? I believe that was a demonic spirit that spoke to him, planted a seed of accusation against Job. And that's what Job's friend did. He wasn't following the Lord. I think he was letting that seed that the enemy planted in his mind in the middle of the night, I believe he allowed that instead of knowing God's divine character and allowing that to rule how he ministered to Job. And so that was my takeaway. We will do day 7 tomorrow. It's going to be Matthew, I think it's 3 and 4. Matthew 3 and 4. So if you want to go ahead and read, it may be tomorrow evening before I finally get to upload the video and discussion. If y'all have anything you want to say about Job 3 and 4, please post it in the comments. And I'll talk to y'all tomorrow.